Hi, my name is Kaya, and a few months ago, my sister sprayed hairspray directly into my eyes because she said I looked at her wrong. I screamed. I couldn't see. My mother laughed. My father muttered, "Serves you right, drama queen." I rinsed the burn by myself. No one came. No one asked. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was realizing this wasn't new. It had always been like this. The silence, the gaslighting, the missing photos, the missing voice, mine. So I started keeping proof. And when I found the letter my grandmother left me, the one they tried to hide, everything changed. Now I own the house they thought would always be theirs. And they're the ones on the outside. How did I get here? Let me show you. If they can laugh while I'm burning, maybe it's time they stop laughing. That thought didn't leave me, not through the night, not even as I cleaned the dishes for the party that wasn't mine. I moved like I was underwater, every movement distant, disconnected from the body doing it. My left eye burned in a steady throb, swollen, crusted, but no one noticed, or they pretended not to. Mom turned to Vera at one point, laughing as she licked ranch dressing off her fingers. "You always did have a flair for putting people in their place," she said, like cruelty was a talent to be praised. Vera tilted her head just enough to flash me a smirk. "Boundaries," she said to no one in particular. "Some people just don't get them unless you help them out a little." No one blinked. Not my mom, not the cousins on the patio, not even Aunt Cheryl, who once gave me a cross necklace for being the good one. The good one doesn't fight back. The good one takes it and stays quiet. I didn't say a word. After loading the last of the greasy plates into the dishwasher, I headed upstairs. My room smelled like lavender and old shame. The ceiling fan creaked, rhythmically slicing the silence like a dull blade. I closed the door, locked it, sat down on the carpet beside my twin bed like I used to when I was 12, hiding from slamming doors and Vera's tantrums. I pulled out my phone. No missed calls, no texts. Not that I expected any. Instead, I opened the camera, stared at the red in my eye, ugly, inflamed, raw. The skin around it was blotched from the chemical. I tilted my head, took a photo, saved it, and labeled the file. Incident 47. It wasn't the first time she'd hurt me, just the first time I documented it. Around midnight, I moved to the bathroom, turning on the tap again. The mirror was still fogged from earlier, but the burn on my skin felt like a fresh brand. I leaned over the sink, cupped water in my hand, and rinsed again. The quiet was worse than the pain. Back downstairs, laughter echoed through the vents. Vera's voice, unmistakable, said, "She's probably journaling her feelings again. What a martyr." A wave of nausea rolled through me, but I held still. What would change if I screamed? Nothing. Nothing but giving them more ammunition. I remembered when I was 10 and burned my palm on the stove while reaching for mac and cheese. Vera had dared me to do it. "Real cooks touch the flame," she'd said. I had cried all night, clutching an ice pack, but when Mom asked, she laughed it off. "She's clumsy," Vera said. "She always does dumb things like that." And they believed her. That night, I had sat in the same bathroom, wrapping my hand in a tea towel, whispering, "I'm okay," over and over until the lie felt like a lullaby. But I wasn't okay then, and I wasn't okay now. I looked up at the mirror. My reflection was tired, older than 34, older than my mother looked some days. I thought about my resume, untouched for months, the interviews I never showed up to, the friends I stopped calling. Somewhere along the way, I disappeared, even from myself. No more. I walked to my room, found my old spiral-bound notebook in the drawer beneath the bed. It had been my journal once, back in high school. The pages were mostly empty, but the front had a quote I had copied from somewhere. "You teach people how to treat you by what you tolerate." I didn't write anything yet, just held the book and breathed. Around 2 a.m., the house finally went quiet. I lay on the floor instead of my bed. Something about the hardwood felt grounding, solid, honest. A creak in the hallway made me freeze. Then footsteps, soft, deliberate. The doorknob jiggled. I held my breath. A pause. Then the sound of paper slipping under the door. After a few minutes, I crawled to retrieve it. A folded note, my mother's handwriting. "Let's not make this a big thing. You know how sensitive you are. Just apologize to Vera, and we can move on. Move on? My eye throbbed. I crumpled the note, tossed it into the trash. Sleep didn't come that night. But something else did. A quiet resolve. The kind that doesn't yell or slam doors, the kind that builds. Because if they could laugh while I was burning, maybe it was time someone lit a match of her own. The Klein family, complete. That handwriting, it was Mom's. Sharp, slanted cursive like she'd written it with intention, as if sealing me out with the finality of ink. The photo lay under the soft yellow light above the kitchen counter, looking too staged to be real. I stared at it like it was evidence, because it was. I didn't say anything, didn't scream, didn't crumble. I just stood there for a minute too long. The refrigerator hummed behind me. Somewhere upstairs, Vera was laughing again, probably at something she posted about setting boundaries. I reached for a glass from the cupboard, poured myself water with hands steadier than I expected. Then I folded the photo in half. Not ripped, just bent, deliberately. I tucked it into my notebook under the heading I had started the night before. Proof they erased me. The next morning, the sun was too bright for how I felt. My left eye still looked irritated, but the swelling had eased a bit. I dabbed it gently with a cool cloth before heading down to the kitchen, already bracing for whatever came next. Vera sat at the table, scrolling through her phone, hair wrapped in a towel, sipping oat milk from my mug, the one I always used. She looked up at me with a flat expression, then went back to her feed. Mom was scrambling eggs, spatula clanging a little too loudly against the pan. She didn't greet me. "Kaya," she said instead, voice too casual. "You'll need to run to CVS later. Vera needs a replacement for her hairspray. It's the $46 one. The blue bottle, not the green. You know the difference, right?" I blinked. "You want me to replace the bottle she sprayed in my face?" She turned, eyes wide like I'd just accused her of stealing. "She said you startled her. You shouldn't have been standing in her doorway like that." "I was in my own room." "Don't get dramatic," she snapped, and turned back to the stove. Dad walked in right on cue, still in his bathrobe, newspaper tucked under one arm. "Let's not make everything an incident," he muttered as he passed by, not even glancing at me. It was surreal. How easily they reframed what happened, like the truth bent under their breath. I didn't argue. I just nodded, went back upstairs, grabbed my wallet, and walked the 4 blocks to CVS. The sun was beating down, unforgiving, but the breeze made it tolerable. It wasn't until I reached the automatic doors that I realized I hadn't even put on makeup to cover the redness. Inside, the air conditioning was a welcome shock. I wandered past the allergy meds and vitamins until I found the hair products. There it was, the obnoxious blue bottle with silver text, Volumize plus Set, professional grade, $46. That was more than I made in a full night cleaning for the Simmons family. Still, I grabbed it. While waiting in line, I heard someone say my name. "Kaya?" I turned. It was Leah Purcell, Leah from high school. We'd had French together sophomore year. "Wow, hey, it's been forever," she said. "Are you still living at home?" I smiled, tight and small. "Just helping out for a bit." "Oh, that's nice. Must be good to have family around." I lied. "Yeah, real good." She told me about her 3 kids, her real estate license, how her youngest just got into preschool early. I nodded, listening politely, counting down the minutes. After I paid, I walked the long way back, past the park, past the old fire station, past the spot where Dad once taught me to ride a bike and yelled when I didn't get it right away. Funny how memory curdles with time. When I got home, Vera was already dressed, hair blown out, makeup perfect. She barely glanced up from her laptop when I placed the new bottle on the table. "Finally," she said. "Thanks for being mature about it." I didn't answer. That afternoon, preparations for her career celebration party kicked into gear. Vera had just signed a new brand contract with some clean skincare line. Mom strung fairy lights in the backyard. Dad brought out the grill. I was told to slice cucumbers and not get in the way. By 5 p.m., the guests arrived. Mostly friends of Vera's, a few church people, and distant cousins I hadn't seen in years. I stayed in the kitchen, arranging veggie trays and pretending not to hear them laugh outside. Near sunset, someone called for a family photo. I wiped my hands on a towel and stepped out onto the deck. "Come on, everybody," Mom called. "Group picture by the rose bushes." I started walking over when I heard her say, "Kaya, can you take it?" For a second, I thought I misheard. "Take the photo," she repeated. "You've always been good with phones." I froze. My cousin Rachel held out her phone, already open to the camera. Everyone else was already posed. Dad, Mom, Vera in the center like a TV anchor, arms around both parents. A picture-perfect moment. I pressed the shutter. "Okay, one more," I said, not because I wanted a better shot, but because I needed 2 seconds more to swallow what was happening. Later that night, I saw the post on Vera's page. "Family first." 53 likes. No tag for me. I went into the living room to get water and noticed the frame above the mantel had been updated. The party picture, enlarged, smiling faces, matching tones, the kind of photo you'd think belonged to a tight-knit unit, except I wasn't in it. I turned to Mom. "Why wasn't I in the picture?" She didn't even blink. "Oh, Kaya, don't start. You're always so sensitive. It wasn't intentional." I nodded slowly. "But you printed it. You framed it. You labeled it." "It's just a photo," she said, shrugging. That night, I went for a walk around the neighborhood. I took the long loop past the school, the old grocery store that closed during the pandemic, the bench where I used to wait for Dad to pick me up after piano lessons he never came to. In my pocket was the CVS receipt. I don't know why I'd kept it. Maybe because it was the only tangible evidence I had that something had happened, that I had done something, that I existed. I came home around 9:30, house quiet except for the hum of the fridge. I walked into the kitchen, meaning to make tea. That's when I saw it, a second print of the family photo. On the back, Mom's handwriting. "The Klein family, complete." I didn't cry. I didn't throw it. I just stared. I didn't sleep much that night. I kept waking up, not from noise, but from memory, like something was tugging at the back of my mind, trying to get noticed. I lay in bed, eyes fixed on the ceiling fan spinning overhead, replaying that phrase. "The Klein family, complete." Over and over. It wasn't the ink that hurt. It was the intention. Around 6 a.m., the house was still quiet. I crept out of my room and wandered down the hallway. My footsteps slowed when I reached the framed photo above the fireplace. I stared at it again, at the smiles, the symmetry. The way Vera stood dead center, Mom angled protectively toward her, and Dad's hand gently resting on her shoulder. I wasn't there. The longer I looked at that picture, the more it began to blur into another memory, not a recent one, but sharp, seared into my bones. Age 10, the smell of bleach, lemon-scented pine, the taste of something bitter. I had been dared. "Drink it, just a sip," Vera had said with that smirk she always wore when she knew no one would stop her. "If you're not a baby, you'll do it." I remembered the searing pain in my throat, the burn. I remembered clutching my stomach on the tile floor, gasping. I remembered Mom driving me to the ER, huffing the whole way. I told the nurse what happened. Vera dared me to drink it. And Mom had laughed. "She's dramatic. Always has been. Probably just wanted a day off school." The nurse wrote something down. I never knew what. Until now. I walked to the kitchen, opened my laptop, and searched for the hospital's records request page. It took 3 clicks and a short form. I filled it out like my hands belonged to someone else. I added a note. "Incident approximately August 2000, chemical ingestion, pediatric ER." By the time the house stirred awake, I had already submitted the form. Later that afternoon, while Mom was at her church volunteer shift and Vera was upstairs doing a live stream for her skincare deal, I got a call. Unknown number. "Hello? Is this Kaya Miles?" the voice asked. Female, older. "Yes, speaking." "This is Nurse Connolly from Blount County General. You submitted a request for pediatric records?" My throat tightened. "Yes, I was hoping to get notes from an ER visit in 2000. There was a pause. I was working that day, she said. We don't get many of these follow-up requests after 2 decades. I waited. Breath held. I remember you. Small thing. Big eyes. Scared out of your mind, but polite. Said your sister dared you. I did. I believed you. I noted it too. She paused again. I hate to say this, but your mother was adamant. Said you were lying for attention. We had to file what she claimed. The notes are still here. I can send them by mail or scan them, your choice. Email, please, I said quickly. 10 minutes later, I opened the PDF. My hands trembled as I scrolled. Patient presented with chemical burns to mouth and throat. Child stated sibling encouraged ingestion. Parent denied, cited behavior issues, not investigated further. That last line settled like concrete in my gut. I printed the document, then printed the party photo I had scanned the night before. I laid them side by side on my bed. One picture of absence, one record of silence. Together, they told the same story. I grabbed a file folder and labeled it, Things They Denied. Inside went the ER report, the photo, the CVS receipt. I wasn't sure what I was building yet, but I knew why. Later that evening, I made tea and sat on the porch swing. The sun had started to dip, painting the sky in hues of copper and soft peach. I opened my email and drafted a message. Subject line, Pattern of Harm, Personal Archive, to myself, attached, ER record, photo, receipt. Message, body, this isn't paranoia, this is record keeping. I hit send. Then I took the folder upstairs and placed it under my pillow. When I finally drifted to sleep, I found myself back in that ER room. But something was different. This time, I wasn't curled in pain. I was sitting upright, and when the nurse asked me what happened, I didn't whisper. My sister gave it to me, I said clearly. The nurse nodded, reached for her pen. Please don't let her do it again. I didn't touch the letter until morning. It stayed where I'd found it the night before, on the floor just inside my bedroom door. I had stared at it for an hour, the weight of its words heavier than its paper. When sunlight finally began to creep through the cracks in my blinds, I sat up, reached for it, and read it again. You need help. Real help. We're worried about your mind. Signed, of course, with Mom's name typed neatly at the bottom. But it was the part scribbled underneath, in that harsh, familiar pen, that got to me. Next time, don't ruin Vera's events. Not, are you okay? Not, we're sorry. Just that. I folded the letter once, then slid it under the mattress, not out of shame, but preservation. I was starting to learn that some things needed to be kept, not to hold on to pain, but to build proof. I pulled on jeans and a faded t-shirt, tied my hair back, and headed downstairs. The smell of coffee filled the kitchen, but the pot was almost empty when I got there. Just enough for one. Vera sat at the counter, legs crossed, scrolling through her phone like she was doing research for the cure to cancer. Mom moved around her like she was orbiting the sun, pouring orange juice, cutting strawberries, humming along to some song she pretended not to hate. Neither of them looked at me. Not when I entered, not when I opened the fridge, not even when I grabbed a banana and leaned against the sink. Eventually, Mom spoke. Kaya, when you get a chance, would you mind running to the hardware store? One of the porch lights went out. I didn't look up. Sure, she smiled, like I was a dog who just obeyed a command. Before I left, I passed through the living room, and there it was again. The new portrait, still hanging above the mantel, perfectly centered, perfectly framed. My absence in it no longer shocked me. It just confirmed what I already knew. I pulled out my phone and snapped a photo. No caption, no filter. I saved it under the file name, erasure.jpg. That night, while Vera was live streaming another QA, this time about maintaining boundaries with toxic energy, I sat in my room and began compiling a timeline. Not just for me, for everything. I opened a Word doc and titled it, The Quiet History. I listed every incident I could remember. The stove burn, the bleached dare, the hairbrush to the face in 7th grade, The time Vera threw my journal out the car window because she didn't like the way I looked at her. The times they laughed, the times they said nothing. I dug through drawers, old school papers, even emails. I attached photos where I had them, the ER report I'd printed, the receipt for the hairspray, a screenshot of Vera's post from 2 days ago, a blurry mascara drawing of a crying girl with her caption, "Some people don't need attention. They need therapy." The comments underneath still made my stomach knot. Yikes, that sister again? Someone needs a padded room. Haters gonna hate. I had hovered over the report button for a solid minute. Then I closed the app. Let them talk. Let it stay up. It was better that way, for now. I wasn't interested in a pity party. I was building something. Quietly. Deliberately. Later that week, I stood in the hallway again, watching Mom dust the frame. "Funny how it's labeled the Klein family," I said casually. She glanced over her shoulder. "What do you mean?" "I'm not in it." She frowned. "Oh, I guess the photographer just missed you." I shook my head. "No, I was there. I just wasn't invited in." She gave me that look, the one that mixes guilt and annoyance, like I'd just tracked mud onto her clean floors. "Kaya, please don't start. You've always been sensitive. You take things personally that aren't meant that way." "Was the handwritten label not personal either?" She blinked. "What label?" I stared at her. "The one that says complete." There was a pause. Then she turned back to the frame, adjusting it half an inch. "It's just a photo, Kaya. Don't make it something it's not." Later that night, I pulled out my journal and wrote one sentence. "This isn't about love anymore. It's about survival." Then I did something I hadn't dared before. I began to erase, not them, me. Their voice messages, the old family group chat, tagged photos from Christmases where I was the one behind the camera. All of it, gone. I unfollowed Vera. Then Mom. I blocked their notifications, their noise. Because I needed space. I needed to hear myself again. And for the first time, I said it out loud to my reflection in the mirror. "If you come for me again, I will not stay quiet." That night, as I settled into bed, my eyes caught movement by the door. A shadow. Then something slipped under the frame. I waited until the steps disappeared down the hallway before I moved. Another letter. Typed. "You need help. Real help. We're worried about your mind." It was signed again by Mom. But this time, there was something scrawled beneath in pen. The ink was thicker, the stroke angrier. "Next time, don't ruin Vera's events." I stared at the words. My hands didn't tremble. My heart didn't race. Instead, I picked up my phone, took a picture of the letter, and added it to the archive. Then I folded it, slid it into the file marked Intent. They wanted to label me. Fine. But I had my own labels now, and I knew exactly where to put them. And this time, I wouldn't fight to be heard. I'd fight to be feared. That sentence replayed in my head as the gate buzzed and I stepped out onto the gravel lot in front of the facility. I didn't look back, didn't wait for some symbolic gust of wind to close the door behind me. I simply walked, the same way you leave a fire you've watched burn too long. I didn't go home right away. Instead, I called Irene. "You're out," she said, voice calm, collected, like this was just the next logical step. "Yes," I replied, "and I have what I need." "Then it's time," she said. 2 hours later, we sat together at the corner table of a small bakery she loved. Her idea, not mine. "We need sugar when we're working on revenge," she'd said with a wink. But I wasn't here for sweetness. I pulled the manila folder from my bag and placed it on the table. Inside, the fake evaluation request, signed without my knowledge. A copy of the email from the clinic's legal department confirming the paperwork was never certified. A printout of the text thread between Mom and the facility's administrator. Cold, calculated. They hadn't even tried to hide their coordination. And nestled between the pages, a handwritten note, familiar curves and loops. My grandmother Eunice's writing. "If they ever silence you, remember, quiet is not weakness. You are not crazy. You are the fire they fear." I found the note tucked inside my old high school notebook. They had brought it with my things, unaware of what it held. She must have written it years ago, long before she passed. Maybe she'd known what I would face. Maybe she'd faced it too. I hadn't cried when they locked the door behind me. But holding her words, I had, not from pain, from clarity. "They've tried to bury you with paper," Irene said, flipping through the file. "Let's bury them with truth." Over the next day, I created a master file. I included every piece of evidence I'd collected since the Hairspray incident. The ER report, the fake psychiatric claims, the texts, the social media screenshots, every scar, documented, every manipulation, filed. I titled the folder, The Klein Archive. That evening, I returned to the house. Mom was watching a crime show, Vera upstairs recording another makeup tutorial. I walked through the front door like I'd just been out for groceries. Mom turned slightly when she saw me. "You look rested," she said with a tight smile. "See? The break helped." I said nothing. Vera appeared at the top of the stairs, holding her phone. "You didn't call," she said. That was rude. I dropped the folder onto the coffee table. They both stared at it. "What's that supposed to be?" Mom asked. "Documentation," I said. "Of everything." Mom's voice went flat. "Kaya, you're not making sense. You forged a medical request," I said. "You filed it through a contact who never had authority to hold me. I have the proof." Vera scoffed. "Oh, please, you're spiraling again." I looked at her, long and cold. "You want to keep going, Vera? Keep gaslighting? Go ahead, because the next step's court." Mom stood, flustered. "Kaya, don't do this. It'll ruin the family's name." I laughed. It slipped out, not planned. "You already did that. I'm just naming it." That night, I made a backup of everything. Then I slept for 12 full hours. The next morning, I filed a formal report with the local authorities. Emotional abuse. Forgery. Fraud. Irene helped me phrase the statements clearly, without accusation, but with precision, the kind of language that lands, the kind of voice they could never twist. Then, I called the lawyer my grandmother once used for her estate and scheduled an appointment. The receptionist paused when I gave my name. "Eunice Miles's granddaughter?" she asked. "She asked us to expect you one day." I blinked. "She did?" "Yes. She said when you came, it would be because you were ready." That stopped me cold. The day of the appointment, I wore the only blazer I owned and sat across from a gray-haired man named Warren, who looked like he'd retired emotionally sometime around 2004. But he was sharp. He handed me a sealed envelope, already addressed in Eunice's handwriting. Inside was a revised will, dated 6 months before her death. Everything was left to me. The house, her savings, her name. "They don't know this yet," Warren said, nodding at the document. "But they will." Back home, I didn't say a word to anyone. I just returned to my room, shut the door, and stared at the walls I'd grown up within. Painted over too many times, but never enough to erase what was underneath. I made tea. I folded the will and slid it into the Klein archive. Then I picked up my phone. Bind notes. Typed, "One more move and I'll see you in court." Then I read it aloud, not because I needed to hear it, but because they did. Just clarity. That's all I uploaded. No caption, no commentary, just slides of documents, the unsigned evaluation forms, the email confirming the facility had no legal grounds to hold me, screenshots of text messages, my grandmother's handwritten will. I didn't tag anyone. I didn't even enable comments. The truth didn't need a chorus. It just needed to exist. Within an hour, the video had over 1,000 views. I left the house without saying a word. It was 10:43 a.m. The sky had that washed-out Tennessee hue that made everything look like it had been through one too many cycles in a washing machine. The air felt like wet cotton, humid, clinging. I met Irene at Walker's Diner just past noon. She was already there when I arrived, sitting in our usual booth by the window, a folder open in front of her and a slice of coconut cream pie untouched. "You didn't sleep," she said as I slid into the seat across from her. I nodded. "Didn't need to." She tapped the folder. This is ready. I spoke to the firm this morning. They're expecting you. The folder was thick. Every printout I'd given her in the past 2 weeks, every supplemental document she'd helped me track down, messages, photos, time-stamped emails. She'd even color-coded the tabs. Blue for evidence, red for violations, yellow for pending response. Every time I opened it, I saw my life in layers of pain and paper. I want to file this officially, I said, though she already knew. No warnings, no meetings, no conversations. Good, she replied. No more whispers, only signatures. The legal aid office was quiet when I walked in. Beige walls, a humming ceiling fan, and the smell of toner. The woman at the front desk smiled, offered me water, and asked me to fill out a form. By 2:00 p.m., I was sitting across from an attorney named Mitchell Allen, mid-50s, thick glasses, eyes that looked like they missed nothing. I handed him the folder. He didn't speak much as he flipped through the pages. His mouth tightened a few times, his eyebrows lifted once, but he said nothing until he reached the last tab. He closed the folder slowly and looked up. This, he said, is not only admissible, it's strong. I exhaled for the first time all day. We're filing for damages, he continued, but we'll also request injunctive relief. That means if this goes forward, we can request the court bar them from any further contact during proceedings. And the inheritance? We'll get to that. But first, we hit them where they live. 3 days later, the papers were served. The lawsuit named all three, my mother, my father, and Vera. Allegations included emotional abuse, fraudulent psychiatric filing, and attempted unlawful control of my legal rights and property. I didn't post about it. I didn't tell my friends. I didn't even breathe it outside that room. But the whispers started anyway. Knoxville's community grapevine is faster than any legal courier. At the grocery store, 2 women looked at me, then whispered behind canned goods. At the laundromat, an older man asked, "Aren't you Eunice Miles's granddaughter? Thought your family was tight." "We were, once," I answered. Word spread further when Vera responded. She posted a video from her bathroom, hair in perfect waves, makeup soft and sympathetic. "She's struggling," she said, voice low and warm, like she was discussing a family member with early dementia. "Grandma wasn't well near the end. She got confused. We're just trying to protect her legacy." The comments were vicious. "She's trying to steal from the family. That sister always was unstable." You can see the jealousy in her eyes. I saved the video. And for the first time, I responded, not with words, but with documents. Another post, another slideshow, no music, no narration, just the facts. This time, I added one title card. Inherited silence stops here. A few nights later, I was folding laundry in the apartment when my phone rang. Unknown number. I let it go to voicemail, but they called again. I picked up on the 3rd ring. "Kaya Miles?" "Yes. This is Jennifer Santos, probate attorney for the estate of Eunice Miles." My throat tightened. "Yes? We've been trying to reach you. Your grandmother's will was read shortly after her passing. You were named sole beneficiary." I didn't speak. My heart was pounding so loudly I could hear it over the dryer. "She left you everything, Ms. Miles. The house, savings, personal belongings. We had correspondence noting this was confidential until you reached out, as per her request. Your mother and sister have been contesting it." "Of course they have," I said softly. "But the document is sealed. It's clear. They have no legal standing." The call ended with an invitation to the office the following Monday. I sat on the floor next to a half-folded towel and stared at nothing for 5 full minutes. My grandmother had known. She'd known the day would come when I'd need a home no one else could take from me. That Saturday, I took a walk past the house. I didn't go in. I didn't stop. I just walked slowly by, letting my eyes rest on the porch where I used to sit on summer nights, counting stars and mosquito bites, where she used to drink iced tea and tell me stories about her sisters in Georgia, where I once believed love lived. I whispered, "This house knew. It waited for me." Then I kept walking. When I got back to the apartment, I opened a suitcase. Not because I was running, but because I was finally going home. I knew you'd come home, Kaya. That voice, her voice, didn't echo in the hallway like some spooky movie trick. It landed somewhere deeper, familiar, unshakable. I stood just inside the doorway of the old Victorian, the one that had been stripped of its warmth since she passed. And yet, that night, the air felt different. Like the house had finally exhaled, like it knew the weight I had carried to get there. It was nearly midnight. The porch light flickered once, then settled. The floorboards creaked under my feet as I set my bag down and ran a hand along the hallway wall, chipped paint, uneven texture, old nail holes that once held family photos. The quiet wasn't empty. It felt like waiting. I slept in the guest room that night. The master bedroom still held too many memories of her. Books with notes in the margins, the smell of lilac and wood polish, a rosary looped over a cracked lampshade. I wasn't ready to enter that space yet. By morning, I was ready for the courthouse. I didn't eat. I didn't curl my hair. I wore the same black blazer from the day I filed the lawsuit and a navy blouse Grandma had once called sharp but not showy. The courtroom wasn't large. It smelled like old paper and lemon disinfectant. I walked in holding the same folder Irene had helped me build, the Klein Archive. Inside, years of denial, finally organized. The front rows were packed. A few people I recognized from church, 2 former neighbors, and 1 local reporter I didn't invite. My mother sat at the defense table in a pearl-trimmed suit she hadn't worn since Easter service 4 years ago. Vera sat next to her, wearing sunglasses indoors like she thought it made her look untouchable. Dad didn't show. When I took my seat across from them, I didn't flinch. I didn't look away. The judge entered, and everything shifted into motion. The testimonies started with facts. My attorney, Mitchell Allen, introduced each piece of evidence like puzzle pieces, not weapons. He walked the judge through the medical report from 2000, the fraudulent psychiatric paperwork, screenshots of social posts, and finally, my grandmother's will. Each item came with a supporting voice. The nurse from my childhood ER visit flew in from Georgia to testify. She wore soft pink and called me kiddo, like she had when I was 10. Irene presented a detailed timeline, text messages, voice notes, date-stamped harassment, calm, methodical, brilliant. My legal aid volunteer, Ashley, explained in plain terms how conservatorship abuse often begins with small things, phrases like just worried and just looking out for them, before it escalates into full control. Vera interrupted once. "This is ridiculous," she snapped, standing. "She's spinning stories. She's always needed to be the victim." The judge, a no-nonsense woman with tired eyes and a voice like gravel, slammed her gavel. "One more outburst, Mrs. Klein, and you'll be removed." Vera sat down hard. I watched her twist the edge of her sleeve with her thumb. Her mother, my mother, reached over to squeeze her hand. They didn't look at me. They didn't need to. I wasn't speaking to them anymore. I was speaking to the room, the judge, the record, and more than anything, to the girl I once was, the one no one believed. When it was my turn, I stood. My hands didn't shake. "I'm not here for revenge," I began. "I'm here because truth should not depend on popularity or manipulation or the ability to lie with a smile." The courtroom was silent. I continued, walking them through each moment, not with tears, but with clarity. The bleached dare, the hospital visit, the years of silence that followed. The moment I was locked in a facility without consent, stripped of dignity under the guise of care. The way my story had always been rewritten by those with louder voices. "I am not angry that they tried to control me," I said. "I'm angry that they were so comfortable doing it and that it almost worked." The judge listened. She asked questions. She took notes. Then she adjourned for deliberation. It took an hour. I sat alone on a bench outside, my folder next to me, unopened now. I had nothing left to prove. Whatever came next, I had already spoken. When the courtroom reconvened, the room held its breath. The judge's verdict was clear. The will was upheld. I was named the sole inheritor of my grandmother's estate, house, savings, everything. A permanent restraining order was issued against both Daphne and Vera. The court record would reflect a pattern of sustained emotional abuse, manipulation, and fraudulent action. Outside that courtroom, the press waited, but I didn't give them a soundbite. I gave them silence. By nightfall, the damage had begun to ripple. Vera lost 2 major brand deals within 24 hours. One issued a public statement. "We stand against familial abuse in all forms." Her apology video dropped that weekend. Crocodile tears, soft piano music in the background, a vague caption, "We all make mistakes. Please allow space for healing." The comments were locked within 10 minutes. Mom's community group quietly removed her name from their monthly newsletter. She tried to play the victim, but people remembered. People knew. I didn't rejoice. I didn't feel victorious. But I did feel unburdened. As Irene and I walked out of the courthouse together, she squeezed my hand. "It's over now," she said gently. I looked at the sunset painting the sky above the city and shook my head. "No, it's just changed." Later that night, I drove back to the Victorian house. The porch light flickered as I pulled into the driveway. I paused, gripping the steering wheel, then stepped out slowly. The night was still, only the sound of crickets and the soft hum of distant traffic. I walked to the door, key in hand. As I turned the lock and stepped inside, the scent of old wood, lavender, and something unmistakably her greeted me. Not literally, but in memory. I stood in the hallway, listening to the echo of a house that had waited for me. And then I heard it, as clearly as if she'd been standing behind me. "I knew you'd come home, Kaya." Then closes the door. And for the first time in my adult life, the silence that followed wasn't empty. It didn't echo with the aftershocks of a slammed insult or the anticipation of being called back to explain myself. It just was. Still. Honest. I stood in the foyer of the house that now belonged to me, watching the last hint of flame flicker out in the fireplace. The unsigned letter had turned to ash within seconds. Threats don't last long when they're exposed to light. Outside, the wind had picked up, brushing dead leaves across the porch like it was helping sweep away what didn't belong. The air had that late fall bite, crisp and clean, and I pulled the front door shut gently behind me, not slamming, not fleeing, just done. The next morning, I started from the top. The house needed more than just new curtains or a fresh coat of paint. It needed to breathe again. I opened every window in the downstairs rooms, let the chill drift through the wood and dust and memory. The living room still held the faint scent of lilac from Eunice's old armchair, and I kept it there, exactly as she left it. Everything else, faded photos, empty frames, chipped dishes in the kitchen, went into boxes. It wasn't an act of erasure, it was reclamation. By noon, I found myself in the hallway just outside what used to be the guest room, though I'd only ever seen guests sleep there once, and that was back in 2006. The wallpaper was peeling in the corners, and the baseboard heater made a low, persistent hum. I walked in, surveyed the space, then moved to the mantel. I hung a single photo, just one. It was of Eunice, laughing in her garden, holding up a crooked tomato in one hand, like it was a prize from the county fair. That was the version of her I wanted to wake up to. Not the proper matriarch in pressed slacks, but the woman who pulled her own weeds and drank her coffee black because sugar's for people who ain't seen enough mornings. With that photo above the fireplace, I knew the room was hers again. And by extension, mine. Later that afternoon, I watched from the other side of the street as a sheriff's deputy knocked on the front door of the house I had once lived in, the one I left behind when it tried to swallow me whole. Daphne opened it slowly, mouth tight, eyes hard. I couldn't hear what was said, but I didn't need to. I knew the contents of the envelope, final legal confirmation of the eviction order. 48 hours to vacate, no contact permitted, no further appeals. Vera appeared beside her, arms crossed, wearing sunglasses even though it was cloudy. She didn't scream, not at first. But when the deputy turned to walk away, Vera stepped out onto the porch and shouted across the lawn, "You're disgusting, Kaya! This house, you think that makes you better than us?" I didn't answer. Daphne's voice came next, softer, weaker. "Kaya, please." This isn't who you are. I stood still. This wasn't what your grandmother wanted, she added, voice breaking. She was confused. She didn't mean. She knew exactly what she meant, I said. You're just mad she didn't tell you first. Then I turned and walked back into my house. No slamming, no grand gesture, just closure. By that evening, I baked lemon cake, the recipe Eunice had memorized, the one she never wrote down but taught me by heart when I was 13. The house smelled like Sundays again. Butter, sugar, zest, and peace. The porch was quiet. No footsteps, no shouting. Just the sound of birds settling into trees for the night and the occasional rustle of wind through the gutters. I sat on the swing out front with a slice of warm cake, wrapped in a blanket, watching the last sliver of sun sink below the houses down the road. The next morning, I did something symbolic, though not for anyone else's benefit. I logged into my old accounts and changed everything. Blocked every number from my family. Closed the shared credit card my mother had insisted I keep for emergencies. Removed my last name from social media. I wasn't trying to disappear. I was just separating. Later that week, my story started to circulate. Not by my hand, but from others. The women's shelter I had quietly supported reposted my silent slideshow of court documents. Advocacy pages quoted my testimony. I got messages from strangers. Women I'd never met who said, "Thank you for speaking." Or, they called me dramatic, too. I didn't reply to most of them. Not because I didn't care, but because I didn't know what to say. I wasn't trying to become a symbol. I was just trying to survive, and now, maybe, rebuild. On the third morning, the movers arrived. I stayed upstairs. I didn't watch as they carried out the furniture my mother once called legacy pieces. I didn't flinch when I heard Vera yelling at someone over the phone. I didn't even check the window when the door slammed. By sunset, the house was empty. Not mine, theirs. Mine was full, of old light and new quiet. As dusk settled, I stepped out onto the porch again. A single envelope sat in the mailbox. No stamp, no return address, just my name. Inside, one line, scribbled in ink. You'll regret this. No signature. I didn't flinch. I walked inside, tossed the letter into the fireplace, lit a match, and watched it curl into blackened nothing. Then I closed the door. Then closes the door. It clicked behind me with a softness that felt final, not like the slammed ones from childhood, not the hurried ones from escape. This one wasn't about shutting someone out. It was about keeping something in, peace, something I hadn't known long enough to trust completely, but enough to recognize its shape. The first week alone was not silent in the way I'd imagined. It breathed. The house had its own rhythms, pipes creaking in the morning, birds tapping at the windows, the sigh of floorboards that had outlived everyone's secrets. I didn't rush to fill the rooms. I wasn't decorating. I was listening. I started with the front room. The wallpaper was peeling, and the trim around the window had splintered from years of sunlight and neglect. Still, it was the brightest space in the house. I painted the walls a soft yellow, not trendy, not muted, but the kind of yellow that made you want to open your eyes a little longer. The neighbors didn't say much. A few nods when I passed, a couple of hesitant smiles. One left a pie on my porch with a note that simply read, "Glad it's you now." That was enough. Each morning I made coffee and wrote a single line in the notebook I kept open on the kitchen table. Just one. I didn't overthink it. Some were as plain as, "I'm still here." Others felt like poems I didn't mean to write. On the 7th day, I wrote, "Today, I get to decide who I am." That afternoon, I sat by the window where the light hit best and wrote the letter. Not to them, to her. To the girl I used to be. Dear me, you were never the problem. You cried because you cared. You stayed silent because they taught you that words were weapons, but now you speak. And when you don't, your stillness still says everything. I see you now, not as the girl they blamed, but the one they feared, because you carried truth too early. You deserved love that didn't have conditions, and now you have it, from me, from yourself. Love, Kaya Miles, homeowner, survivor, and whole. I folded the letter and placed it inside the old recipe box Eunice had left behind. Not because I needed to hide it, but because I wanted it surrounded by things made for joy. Flour-stained index cards, oil-splattered clippings, a note in her handwriting that read, "Bake as if someone's coming over, even if no one is." 2 days later, Vera's fall from grace made local news. A headline on the community site read, "Beauty influencer loses sponsorships after family court ruling." The article quoted sections from the court record, nothing graphic, just enough to pull the thread. The comments were merciless. Why do people protect abusers just because they're pretty? So glad someone finally called her out. My daughter showed me this. Every girl in high school needs to see what happens when you bully for years and think no one's watching. That night, Vera posted a video, her face bare, eyes puffy, tone breathy. "I've made mistakes," she said. "I never meant to hurt anyone. I'm on a healing journey." Comments were disabled before the video hit 400 views. I didn't watch it a second time. I didn't need to. Mom, meanwhile, disappeared from the neighborhood entirely. Word got around that she moved in with a cousin in Maryville. No one saw her at church. Her volunteer posts went quiet. Someone else took over the newsletter. One day, I got a voicemail from an unknown number. It was her. I didn't listen. I deleted it before it even played. Not because I was angry, because I was healing. You don't open the door to a fire once you've finally rebuilt the walls. That weekend, I found a small photo in an old envelope tucked behind a book on the living room shelf. It was of me at 10 years old. Awkward haircut, eyes too big for my face, holding a science fair ribbon with a crooked smile. I'd forgotten about that version of me. I framed it, set it on the mantel next to Eunice's picture, not to mourn the childhood I didn't get, but to honor the girl who survived it. The truth is, it still lingers. I still jump when a door slams. I still check the locks twice, sometimes 3 times. But the difference now is this: I'm not waiting for the storm. I'm sitting in the house I claimed, under a roof built by a woman who knew silence wasn't safety, and who gave me the keys not just to bricks and wood, but to the freedom I never thought I'd know. That evening, I made the lemon cake again. The batter came together like a memory, every stir a heartbeat. When it was done, I cut a thick slice, poured a glass of milk, and sat by the window. Outside, the world went on. Inside, there was only me, sunlight warming my face, and not a single sound from upstairs. And they were right about one thing: no one expected who'd own the house next. Sometimes, the loudest kind of strength is the one that doesn't scream. It simply walks away and builds something better. Kaya didn't fight to be believed. She fought to be free. And in doing so, she reminded us, you don't have to stay where love is conditional or where your truth is denied. Have you ever been made to feel like the villain in your own story, just for speaking up? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more real-life stories of quiet power and unexpected justice.